Sean, Brandon Johnson comes up with a Hail Mary catch on the double deflection. But what did you see on the 2-point play?
Same thing. I mean, look, we got a play we're going to get to. I think Judy actually comes open. We come off that and we're going to Cortland. We'll see it on tape, but I probably didn't have as good a view as you guys did.
Hello and welcome into a post-game edition of the Not Another Bucking podcast. We are coming to you after a Broncos Week 2 loss to the Commanders, in which they blew a 21-3 lead, then almost got all the way back into it on a Hail Mary on the final play of the game, failed the 2-point conversion, so they lose by 2, 35-33, dropping to 0-2 on the season. So much to get into. I'm Nick Kosmider, Broncos beat writer at The Athletic. Joining me is Matt Kosmider, my brother and our producer on the show. Expertise in football went to the upper echelons of the varsity level in Southern Arizona, I think we could say. Yeah.
Competitive junior college referee. Competitive junior college
referee. I think the qualifications there have been laid bare and are very, very well established.
Yes.
Yeah, Matt. So we're gonna get into this. There's a lot to talk about with this game, and I think the biggest takeaway that I had is that the Broncos are springing new leaks every time they plug a different one. This was sort of my takeaway that I ended my story with tonight. Was in Week 1 we saw a Broncos team that looked more efficient, more operationally in sync, quicker to the ball, better tempo, all those sorts of things. What they lacked was explosive plays. They didn't get the ball down the field. They didn't do any of that kind of thing. Well, here we are today in Week 2 against the Commanders. They jump out to a 21-3 lead. They score those 3 touchdowns in a total of 17 plays. Marvin Mims gets 113 yards receiving on 2 catches within the game's first 11 plays. Jaleel McLaughlin, the undrafted rookie who didn't really play a whole lot last week, has a 5-yard rushing touchdown on Denver's first drive. And you're saying, man, okay, here's that pop. They took what they needed to from game 1. They built some new personnel packages that they get some of their fast, athletic playmakers onto the field in advantageous situations, and they're off and running. But then it's a step forward, 2 steps back. There's operational problems. They burn all 3 of their timeouts in the first half. And then the defense, really, I think it flipped when Kareem Jackson gets ejected, which we'll talk about more in a minute. It after harassing Sam Howell for 3 sacks in the first half, totally loses its ground in the second half, where the Commanders score 5 times in a 6-possession stretch, including 4 touchdowns. The defense had no answers for anything that Eric Bieniemy, the Commanders OC, was throwing at them. I mean, it was just it I think goes to show that this is a team that just has so many widespread issues that this task for Sean Payton and making it all come together is probably going to be a lot more significant than maybe even he imagined when he took this job.
Yeah, and defensively, you can see that Vance Joseph is trying to scheme to cover some of those perceived weaknesses, right? So last week they were very much we're going to stop the run, so they're playing very conservative. They're not the defensive ends, the linemen are staying home, being conservative. But they don't pressure Jimmy Garoppolo at all. This week they're like, no, we're going to pressure Howell. We're going to get after him. The first couple drives where the defense got off the field, it was because of good defensive line play. We'd come up with the big sacks, the big stops in the run game to kind of force those longer plays, and the defense kind of made those big plays. But once you're then saying, hey, defensive ends, get after the quarterback, go for it, you're opening yourself up to other problems. So that's where the screen game in the back half just absolutely decimated the team on a couple really big screen plays. And that's kind of the price you pay when you start to really turn out the defensive ends and really go after the quarterback. Is you have to be really good in that tackling downfield and the secondary. And with the way the secondary was playing today, that tackling and that kind of play just didn't support the line playing as aggressively as they were.
Yeah, there was a play, I think, in the fourth quarter that sort of served as a microcosm for that issue that you're talking about, where they got a screen pass out to, I think it was either Gibson or Brian Robinson, one of the two. And there's 2 just huge offensive linemen in front of him. And our vantage point up in the press box is, it's you get the eagle eye view, so you see right away. Like if you're watching that on TV, you probably don't automatically realize that he's running for days.
Right.
But from up there, you're like, oh my gosh, there's him. There's 2 300-pound guys, and maybe a safety 15 yards down the field who is not going to really enjoy trying to combat. They
got 2 blockers, right?
It was interesting. Sean Payton said in the preseason, they had this drive against the 49ers to open their second preseason game, first drive defensively of that game. And they ultimately get off the field, allowing just a field goal. They I think sacked Brock Purdy in the red zone. But before that, they give a big wide receiver screenplay to Deebo Samuel. And Sean Payton said afterwards, like, yeah, the next time that we stop a wide receiver screen is going to be the first, like, tongue in cheek. But it's been true. Like the wide receiver screens have killed them. And in this game, especially in the second half, it was the running back screens. And a lot of that was built on the fact that, Sam Howell threw the ball. I knew he was throwing the ball a lot. And part of it was because they fell into a 21-3 hole, but 30 pass plays in the first half, like pretty incredible for a guy that got sacked 6 times last week to drop him back 30 times in the first half. And the Broncos sacked him 3 of those times. But even then, he was able to use his athleticism to create some stuff. And then when the second half started, Eric Bieniemy, they were in a position where they're within a score. They don't need to panic and drop Sam Howell back 100 times. They start pounding the ball, to your point, against a formation that was more designed to sit here and rush the passer, weren't trying to stop the blocks. And in another good point by you, they're not tackling. That first wave of defenders is not tackling. But so those are some of the granular issues, but this is a team now, Matt, that is it is 4-11 in 1-score games since the start of last year. And I know there is variance to these things. Teams can go on great runs of finishing these games. They can go on these stretches, but it's now kind of converging over 2 seasons where they are just unable in these moments where they have to make plays to make them. And this is not going to change in terms of how often you're in these kinds of games. What did you see like in the fourth quarter specifically as they're trying to come back that really kind of that really illustrated some of the issues that they're having in these moments?
Well, I mean, a lot of the issues we were having last year with this team was that they weren't getting the execution out, the play calls in. They weren't getting to the ball as quickly as we expected. A lot of delay of games and pre-snap penalties and stuff. So this game, they get the ball with 7 minutes left, down 2 scores. So you're in hurry up offense. Like this should more or less be your 2-minute offense. You have to score. You hopefully score with enough time to kick it away and get a stop. That's ideally how that goes. You don't want to have to onside kick or rely on an onside kick to get your second chance to score. So like you want to hurry up and get to the ball quickly. But on that last drive, like routinely the ball's down in bounds, the clock's running, and they're snapping the ball with less than 10 seconds on the play clock, like repeatedly. And it's like there's no urgency anywhere on that field at that point. Like the running backs are catching balls out of the backfield, and then instead of like taking the 4 yards and getting out of bounds, they cut back inbounds and get 2 extra yards, but chop off 20 seconds on the play clock. Like those are the kinds of things that the situational football that we expect from a Sean Payton team to be a little bit better. And like then like you're down at the goal line, you have 1st and goal on the 1, you have over 2 minutes left. You want to kind of get a couple plays in quickly. And then, you'll have enough time. You'll have 3 timeouts and be able to get the ball back. Russell Wilson gets sacked twice, including one that runs the ball out to the 2-minute. Like you can't take those sacks. Like that's where you need to score a touchdown.
That was critical. Yeah. The one specifically on 3rd and goal, when he gets sacked on 3rd down, right? Like, so in that situation, you're down 11 points. So you know that if we don't get this in, we are going, if we don't get this into the end zone on 3rd down, we're going to kick the field goal. But get rid of the ball. The worst case scenario is that you have to burn one of the timeouts that you're going to need on the back end because you're going to try the onside kick at that point. To your point, that's probably not what they set out to do initially. But by the time the 2-minute warning hit, they knew that was going to have to be part of the equation. They were going to have to onside kick it. They were going to have to at least try that. And we'll talk about that in a second. But on a 3rd down play, if you're already going to have to take the field goal, to take a sack is just the worst thing that can happen in that situation outside of throwing a pick, obviously. But
it's 40 seconds.
It's a huge. It's like you wasted an entire timeout. They could have used that timeout obviously on that last drive that ultimately they score a touchdown on with a Hail Mary.
Right.
But it's not what you're setting out to do. And Sean Payton said after the game, he you didn't have to read too deep between the lines to find his criticism of Russell Wilson, right? He mentioned that Wilson's fumble in the second quarter with the Broncos leading 21-3 was where he says that's where the momentum shifts. Like, he kind of saw that as the play that really kind of let Washington get back into the game. And so there was that issue. He talked about Russ needing to be sharper. And he said, if we have to go to a wristband, we'll do it, which is essentially him saying, like, my play calling into him and then him into the huddle and then the players taking it, getting out of the huddle to the line. None of that is happening quickly enough. And if we need, and Sean Payton, obviously that would be new for him too. That wasn't something that he did with Drew Brees. But the wristband thing for Russell Wilson came up last year. He's, week 8, halfway through the season, he's wearing a wristband because they were having issues with his communication. So here we are already in week 2, and it's getting brought up as, hey, this might be one of the things that we have to do to make this operation more functional. It's just, again, it's these series of things that are so familiar to last year. And I think while some of the play design has been a lot better, they're this in the situational stuff that they're trying to do is a lot better. It's just still some of these issues that a lot of them do come back to Russell Wilson, who, when you're talking about all these different offensive linemen that you've had, all these different schemes, and he's still been sacked 64 times in his 17 starts over the last 2 years. A lot of those are on him, and they're just not figuring out ways to this point of like masking all these issues that he's having right now. And it's tough to find a way that they can strike consistently with these issues because they're presenting so many weaknesses for opposing defensive coordinators to exploit.
True, but I think the one thing that you can take from this game on a positive note is that we did see how the formula works. When this team is running the ball, they are a different team. When they're running the ball well, so like the first drive, they ran the ball 5 times for 51 yards and a touchdown. The second drive, they then capitalized on that with the play action pass that goes for the Mims touchdown. Then the next drive, they run the ball 6 times for 21 yards, and they get the big Mims play again because suddenly those defenses, instead of playing that soft zone that Russell has a tough time being patient enough against, you're instead seeing them bring an extra defender down into the box to stop their run, and that's when Russell can do what Russ does best, which is those giant moon balls that go 50 yards and land in the sprinting wide receiver's hands somehow. Like, that's what Russ does best. And like, when you give him those opportunities by working the run and being effective for the run, things go well. The rest of the game after those 3 drives, the running backs went 8 carries for 10 yards. That compared to those first two drives is absolutely game changing. Like, you're now asking Russ to beat the the Commanders, instead of doing it with the whole gamut of what this team does well, which is running the ball. So I think that, I don't know if that's a Sean Payton switch. I don't know if that's just the line not opening up those same holes, but like they didn't seem as committed to the run after those first few drives, and it really didn't work out for them.
Well, and that's where it goes back to like their margin for error being so thin, is because like you're 100% right. Like that's where they came out running the ball, 2 explosive runs within their first 3 carries. Wilson himself was running the ball really effectively. Had a design run that got him to the edge on that opening drive for a 14-yard gain. Beautiful play design there. They got Marvin Mims on the edge on a run. So many of those things where they're really multiple in the running game. They're stretching the field horizontally and then running you up the middle as well. Like that's what they want to do. But as soon as they fumble the ball, and here come the Commanders, and they come down and they score a touchdown. They get the 2-point conversion after Kareem Jackson's, really egregious late hit that got him ejected from this game. So the Commanders decide from the 1-yard line, hey, let's give it a shot. Initially ruled down on review. They get that. So now it's a 10-point game. The Broncos from there still are in good position. But when that next drive, with 1:47 to go, they quickly peter out. And then, the Commanders come back, hit a 35-yard play on 3rd and long to get you within range of a 49-yard field goal. Like, it was just these, as good as their 2-minute situation was to end the week 1 of the first half, This 2-minute situation went the complete opposite way, and then they followed that up with a 3-and-out to open the drive. And so then they get into that point that you're talking about where they are having the defense knowing that Russ is going to drop back and pass. Like, that's the worst situation that they could be in. That's where we see these protection issues. This is where we see Russ start to get happy feet, and it just turns into an area where they just look so like they're grasping at straws offensively, as opposed to when they are kind of setting the tone, running the football. But yeah, I agree with you. They just seem like they had so many opportunities to be in that mode, even as the Commanders started to gain ground, and they just got away from what they did early in the game.
Right. And like we talked about explosive plays, like Marvin Mims Jr. has 2 catches today in the first 3 drives. He's now their leading receiver. Like he has the most receiving yards on his team because he took the top off that defense and absolutely like played out. And like right after that, he has the 45-yard punt return. Get that guy the ball. He didn't touch the ball again until the last punt with a minute left. He fair caught it. That was his next touch. Like get him the ball. Jaleel McLaughlin, he came in and touched the ball once and scored a touchdown. That's all he did. Like those two need to see more plays. Like down the stretch, they had Samaje Perine in the backfield a lot. And I think the reasoning is that Perine's a better blocker, but they weren't keeping him into block. They were running him on little like safety valve routes, and he kept catching the ball for 5 yards. Like if you're going to run the little wide receiver check down or running back check down, throw it to the guy who has the big play potential. That to me feels like Jaleel McLaughlin right now, more so than Samaje Perine. So like I get that he may not be, as a rookie, he's probably not as good as in pass protection, but you're not using him that way there. Use the guy who can get you that explosive play.
I think they're going to start having to like they're gonna have to start incorporating them more and more, because this team just lacks speed. Like that's the biggest thing that we've been talking about, from especially out on the edge. Like they got Drew Sanders in the game a couple times. His first play, he runs a stunt inside, almost gets there, although Sam Howell completes a pass under pressure. He then there's another critical thing that's been happening is like these defensive penalties, like on third down and critical situations, continue to pile up. Drew Sanders came in on a big third down in the fourth quarter, gets a sack. It gets called back because Fabian Moreau, the veteran corner, commits a holding penalty downfield that was really iffy in my mind.
Yeah, that one, I didn't really like that call.
And that turned, I mean, so again, it was another drive that ended up ending in points for the Commanders that kind of helped them melt this game away. But again, you saw the explosiveness, and that's, especially if this thing gets away from them record-wise. They're 0-2 now. They go to a Miami team that's 2-0 and has arguably one of the best offenses in the league, going against a Broncos defense that is injured. It's having, I think kind of Vance Joseph is struggling a little bit to kind of find the right personnel fits. They're really struggling in the red zone, for various reasons. But I just think that you're going to have to play these young guys a considerable amount more. Sean Payton said sometimes the coverage dictates it. Sometimes with the personnel groupings you're running, it turns into coincidence. It's like, whatever the reasoning is, like, get Marvin Mims the football. He's shown he can carry the ball, had the big run, get it to, punt return, whatever the case might be. The guy's electric and looking at this point like a second round steal, almost a third round pick for Denver. They got to get him the ball more. They got to get Jaleel McLaughlin the ball in space. But again, it's just these mistakes that keep popping up in these critical situations. I don't know from like because so many of the guys making mistakes of guys that have been part of this. We're going to long-term see a lot of roster churn here until he gets the guys in there doing exactly what he wants. Because right now I just think there's a disconnect. There
is, but talking about roster changes, Nick, I know that at this point of the season, 0-2, the sky is falling, everything's falling apart. I checked out the comment section on the first article you wrote on The Athletic. It's, we're tanking for Caleb. Where's Jarrett Stidham? How far do you think that the Broncos get into this before they would be looking at potentially making a change at quarterback?
Yeah, certainly it's not now, right? Like I certainly understand the sentiment that fans have who have been riding this train a long time. And Mike McGlinchey, the right tackle, big free agent acquisition, it was interesting post game. He says, "Listen, I understand here. Everybody's saying like this is the same. Here we go again. This is the same thing." He's like, this is not the same thing. I promise you, we're going to get this turned around. There's too many good people, too many good coaches in here. For people that haven't been part of that like history of it, they're saying like it is really not good that we're 0-2 with our first 2 games at home. Like this, the stats will tell you that a team that loses its first 2 games at home is not making the playoffs. But from their perspective, like not attached to everything that has happened in the past. But you can't ask fans to separate that from the way that they view the game, right? Like there's too much carryover year to year, seeing too many familiar things to not have that sentiment. But the team is not going to panic in probably the same way the fans are saying like this season is over. That being said, like Sean Payton is ultimately going to have to see what he has with this roster. And that includes potentially down the road what he has in a quarterback who he believes has starting upside. And the reason the Broncos might need to figure that out with Jarrett Stidham is because if they decide that Russell Wilson is not their future quarterback, they're going to have to get they're going to have to move on from him before next season. So by the time the new league year starts next year, they're going to have to get out of that contract. Otherwise, his $37 million for 2025 becomes guaranteed. And at that point, you've locked yourself in now to 2 more seasons after this one. Whereas if you cut him by March next year, if you've already decided he's not going to be your future quarterback, now you're moving into 2024 with probably Jarrett Stidham would be your guy. But then also you have a first round draft pick. Maybe you go after one of these quarterbacks depending on what your record is. Again, this is not something that the day-to-day people on the team are probably focused on right now. They're focused on how the heck are we going to stop Tyreek Hill and, all that kind of thing. But if it continues to go this way in this direction and Russell Wilson continues to struggle to not necessarily have the answers to lift this offense, again, I don't want to put all this on him today. He had some really good moments. To your point, some of these deep balls that he hit were just excellent throws. He still has that part of his game. He ran pretty well. But again, it's a bottom line business. And the bottom line is the team is 4-13 since he became the starting quarterback in his starts, 4-13. He's been sacked 64 times. So when will it happen? That's hard to say. But if this is the trajectory that continues, what will happen, I think, at some point is similar to what you saw with the Raiders last year. They had decided that Derek Carr wasn't going to be their future guy, so they were not going to let him get injured and have that next year's salary become guaranteed, because at that point it was guaranteed only for injury. And they made that decision to sit him down, start Jarrett Stidham. It's ironic that Stidham could be that potential guy in that situation one more time. But again, it's just the way that the tea leaves are written on the wall of that's how it could go. But again, I think this team is hopeful that some of the good things that they've been putting together these first couple of weeks can become more consistent. They can shed some of the negatives. But again, it's a lot of holes to plug at this point.
A lot of holes, and you're getting ready to travel to one of the best teams in the league. So it's not a great time to have to be trying to figure out who's going to be playing in your secondary. Who knows if Kareem Jackson's even going to be available next week? Like that was one of the more egregious hits that we've seen in a while. And coming off of a week where he got fined last week, it wouldn't be surprising to see him miss next week's game as well. So we'll have to wait and see what the league brings down for that one. But I wouldn't be surprised if they're running out, or if they're trying to figure out a safety on the free market somewhere to bring in and start against Tua and the Dolphins offense right now.
Yeah, they will have to bring another. Yeah, they'll have to bring another safety in just from a personnel perspective. They've lost Caden Stearns for the season. PJ Locke can't come off IR until week 5 at the earliest. And if you are without Kareem Jackson due to a suspension, you're at Justin Simmons and Delaren Turner-Yell who played in there. That was again another part of Denver's struggles in the second in the second half was you had a guy Delaren Turner-Yell playing had not played a defensive snap in his career. A second-year player had only played special teams. Gets out there all of a sudden you're in a starting safety position. And then, Damari Mathis is continuing to have some struggles on the outside. He was in coverage on the big touchdown pass to Terry McLaurin in the third quarter. They've got some issues. The secondary was the unit that we thought going into the season was just loaded, deep, and all of a sudden it is really They're really having a tough time keeping people in the lineup, but then having those people perform well. Riley Moss, the rookie, was a healthy scratch this week after being, listed out due to injury in week 1. Rookie corner, again, that's just why so much of this is you're looking at and saying they're going to need to play these young guys. If this is the way the season's going to go, they're going to need to play some of these young guys and start just really getting them that experience so you can hit the ground running in 2024. It's crazy to have to start thinking in that way. And I don't think, again, the Broncos they're going to sit there this week and try to make a game plan that they think can go beat the Dolphins. But again, I think these conversations are going to start coming sooner rather than later. Any final thoughts for you, Matt?
I think that we're just going to kind of wait and see. It's not where you want to be 2 games into the season, especially knowing that when we were looking at those first 4 games, these first 2 seemed to be the most winnable. Now traveling to Miami, if you're staring down the barrel at 0-3, and then you're trying to climb back from that, they need to fix something, and it needs to happen fast. So it's time, if what the stuff Sean Payton has in that back pocket that he was hoping to pull out in week 10, week 15, week 18 to win some games down the stretch, it might be time to reach into that bag of tricks and pull some stuff out and make some magic happen.
Yeah, I almost got the sense watching this game today that that's what he had sort of done for week 1 was, almost be a little bit more vanilla, thinking that you probably had enough to beat the Raiders. Because, you saw it right away. I mean, he was in his bag on that first drive. Like some of the stuff that he was calling was just really, creative. The way that they were getting people on the edges, mixing it up, personnel wise, it was impressive. They had the Broncos never scored touchdowns on 3 consecutive drives last year. I'll have to go back and look. The last time they did that was probably 5 years ago. Like that stretch to begin the game was impressive. And that's what gives you hope, right? Like it's in there. And if they can dictate the tempo of the game and they can do what, sort of set that tone, like it's in there. But it's just like to have the lulls in between to go 6 drives, the next 6 drives after that only produce 1 field goal. It's just this like consistency issue that is really the biggest task that Sean Payton has ahead of him. But we'll see how it goes. Again, we'll get back on here middle of the week to start to preview this game against the Dolphins, in which they're going to be going against their old head coach Vic Fangio, who's got that Miami defense with old friend Bradley Chubb, and we'll talk about that and how you even go about the task of starting to try to defend Tyreek Hill and that explosive Miami Dolphins offense. That is what is ahead of the Broncos if they somehow want to avoid an 0-3 start that will certainly put you well behind the 8 ball in terms of making the postseason. But we appreciate you guys listening. Hope you found us for this post game episodes and got all the venting out. So until then, we will see you guys next week. Thanks for watching and thanks for listening.